Hello, everybody, and welcome to...
I was gonna say 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
And right out of the gate,
I was doing underscoring for you.
we've dissolved
For
into
our
madness.
guest.
It's been less than 25 seconds, Katie.
And Katie's
fast.
ruined the show.
Move fast, move true.
Welcome to the Sorting Hat Podcast. I, as always, am your host, Michael Barryte, joined as the just master of chaos, Katie Reed.
I was doing the Law and Order theme song.
Right, which...
Dun dun dun.
dun. What?
Like the actual
Like going into
notes
the
to
real-
it is like dun.
I know all the notes to the song. It doesn't have lyrics, but it's the SVU theme song. It's the only one I like.
I hear it now, but before I was like, that's way too happy. It sounds like a sitcom.
No, there's a weird part where it's like,
yeah.
maybe we'll get coffee after we examine this body.
And maybe I'll get to introduce our guest. It's Andrew Tippin.
Hi, my name is Andrew Tippin.
Andrew Tippin is a comedian, improviser, and in the process of getting his law degree.
Yes.
Bum, bum. That's why I was doing it, folks.
Right. But
Everything has a reason.
They didn't have that context, so it was just up until now you being really weird. Like, we just got the Shyamalan twist.
Before the movie.
But you had very overtly put out all the clues.
I'm sure everyone turned it off before we even got to the edge of the twist. But everyone who's still here, welcome. We have a lawyer in training. Do you say Esquire?
As far as I understand, when you are licensed to practice, so when I pass the bar and get my license, I can then put Esquire after my name.
I did that all the time arbitrarily. I would write it on checks and stuff.
I never knew until I was in
You
law
get in
school.
trouble if you do that?
I don't think so, because
You
no
just
one
seem like a dick.
The government's coming after you, Katie. So because we have, well, not just because, but we discuss on the Sorting Hat podcast, for those unfamiliar, we are sorting things into the various houses of Hogwarts based on our guests' subject of expertise.
Yeah, no people, but everything can be sorted.
Yes, everything and everything.
and also everything.
Yes. So since we have somebody very aware of the law and able to break it down a little bit.
Certainly aware.
He's not a scofflaw like me.
No.
He's the opposite of a scofflaw.
Yes,
respect
certainly.
law.
Yeah,
I'm a respect
he
law.
bows at the law.
So we're going to be breaking down the Bill of Rights.
Yes.
Because every lawyer in the U.S. has got to know themselves that Constitution.
And every person on Twitter seems to think they understand the Constitution.
And I can definitely say in the general prep for this, which was minimal, I definitely thought back on high school and realized I don't think we looked over the Constitution or Bill of Rights like at all. Like,
I think it's like one of those things that you get one day for, and I'm like, oh damn,
Right.
that should be a whole semester.
Right.
Oh, hell yeah. I remember reading a couple cases. I think we discussed Miranda. We looked at the Bill of Rights, vaguely at the Constitution. I also took like AP government.
mhm.
So that's, but
Brag alert.
even then we didn't like do it enough. So I want to like go back to high schools and be like, listen, assholes.
Whoa, that's very aggressive for like 15, 16-year-olds.
They'll respond.
The children will respond to me.
It's also crazy just in looking through it because initially we were thinking we were going to be doing the Constitution, but then we were like, nah, it's the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Constitution itself, it's just 1 through 7 articles that are fairly short.
Yes. Yes.
And the Bill of Rights,
It's a beach read.
These
It
10,
is, yeah, it's definitely a beach read.
these 10 core amendments are like absolutely necessary. And James Madison, when he penned all of these, was like, guys,
What are we doing?
we need a little more substance to our Constitution. Like, we did this haphazardly to present a middle finger to King George.
Right.
And then
Well,
our
we
government.
didn't think this through. We didn't think this through, fellas.
Yeah.
One day, all of these people that we say are property might not be property. We should, including the women.
Fun note, amendment, just to make sure. Yeah, it's Amendment 10. The one that's
Which is crazy when I read this.
the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. That one, which we will sort in a moment, he didn't even want to write because
Oh, really?
he said, this is really obvious, duh. But if you're gonna, I guess we have to write it down.
If y'all gonna be a
if you're
dick
gonna
about
bug
it,
us,
yeah.
Although it's very funny that that's number 10 because you think that that's the perfect period to everything.
Yeah, to the Constitution.
Because then they go, and this is how our Constitution works. Bump, like
yeah.
anything that we aren't covering is now to the states.
Yeah, that seems like something that'd be like, and here's the disclaimer at the top, folks.
Yeah.
Right. But then we have, a slew of other amendments, which I would say are probably pretty good that they're in there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Show.
But we're just covering the top 10, I guess.
Right.
The original 10.
Yeah. So shall we dive into it? We can dive in starting with number 10 and working our way backwards.
I just want to
Because
say
the last two are the ones everyone wants to talk about anyways. The ones that, because the ones that only, like people even pretend that they understand.
All right. So
well, the most obscure ones that don't.
So we'll start at the bottom. But
yeah.
you had something
so
you
stick
wanted.
around if you're not scared.
I just wanted to let everyone know that this is my first podcast in any capacity.
I'm so sorry.
Never been a guest. And I just want to say, for those of you who've never recorded a podcast, this mic that's directly in front of my face right now is like the most like gentle but aggressive like dental surgery. I feel like I'm about to have like a cavity drilled by like a poofy kitten.
Yeah, the
something.
microphones are very close to our mouths. It's as though we're eating cotton candy, but it is incredibly
If
firm.
you're wearing
Black cotton
headphones,
candy.
if you're wearing headphones, you are millimeters away from my lips right now.
I
might
could
just
kiss your
you.
ears, but I'm not going to make the noise.
I'm doing it. I'm doing.
It is also worth tangenting just a little bit more because when I did ask Andrew to be on this podcast, he was like, great, I'll listen to a few episodes. And it is worth noting, Andrew is a person with strong opinions.
I am. I very am.
Which is great for you entering, to be a public defender and do that
Great.
whole law
Yes,
thing.
Absolutely.
But I received a string of texts from you just being like, you're wrong about this. You're wrong about this. You're wrong about this.
oh yeah.
I can't wait to be on the podcast.
I'll say this on the podcast. You got Sudafed wrong. Go listen back to their cold medicine episode. They sorted Sudafed wrong. I'll tell you that right now.
What do you think? I don't even remember what we said.
Sudafed is for sure a Gryffindor, guys.
I feel like we should just now have you on periodically as the corrections department.
Yeah.
The ones I have strong opinions about that I'm like, you guys
Yeah,
messed
please
it
know
up.
that he's wearing a full 3-piece suit. He has a briefcase.
Sweating.
We don't know what's in the briefcase. He'll never tell us.
Right. It is also worth noting, man, we've got to get better at these introductions. But
We haven't started.
I am a Ravenclaw. Katie is a Hufflepuff.
Of course I am.
And now I am of the mindset because we asked Andrew this, and he stated, I think it was like
I can describe it. So I've taken the Pottermore test 8 times.
What?
What?
Why?
The first time I took it, I was a Ravenclaw. Then they did the whole site revamp.
right.
And I took the test again, and it was like Gryffindor, and I was like, hold on. And I took the test again, and they switch up the questions. And that time I got Ravenclaw, and I was like, cool, okay, I've gotten Ravenclaw twice. Took it a couple times more just for accuracy purposes. So at that point, I had gotten Ravenclaw twice, Gryffindor once, Slytherin once, and Hufflepuff once. So it was
Did you take it? But did you take it on the same browser without turning off your cookies? Because what if that was affecting it? Now you might have to take it another 8 times.
I didn't know that cookies might even affect it.
Yeah, the aggregate
If
of
it
your
affects-
score, I'm very
so
unsure of.
So then I took it 3 times when I knew I was going to be on this podcast. I took it 3 more times. I took it 3 more times just to make sure, because I got Gryffindor and I was like, what? And then I got Gryffindor again, and then I got Gryffindor 3 times within 10 minutes.
I'm of the opinion that you are a Gryffindor.
So, and I'll let you know, I know there's a lot of Gryffindor fans out there. I actually am disappointed that I am a Gryffindor.
Wow.
Trust me, I get that. I'm what you wish to be in that I'm a Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
But
I think I'm a Ravenpuff. That whole
no, I see you
combino thing.
so much as a Gryffindor based on your
I'm a
personality.
big
And
old coward.
Dude, like
And
if there's any
but
house
how-
that is going to take a test 11 times because they're having so much trouble struggling to find their identity, it's somebody in Gryffindor.
I also
I was just
feel
trying to confirm the accuracy of the test.
which
Took that
is
damn test 11 times.
that, however, is a Ravenclaw move.
There you go. Yeah.
But I feel the way that you argue over things is a very Gryffindor. You're like defending the opinions and everything like that. But we should dive into it.
We got to get into it.
We should dive into it because we've talked for, more than 10 minutes on.
People are listening to this just for me, right? So I might as well.
Yeah, they're all here for you, Andrew. So let's start off at the bottom with Amendment 10, which reads, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
All right, now Tippin, will you do us a solid, because I'm a dum-dum, will you put this into like layman's terms when we have each one read out?
It means that the powers that are not given to the federal government directly by the words of the Constitution itself, because it lays out, the president has these powers, Congress has these powers, the judicial branch does this. Everything that it doesn't say states, federal government, U.S., this is your job to do. Amendment 10 says that's the state's job. If we we told Congress they have the power to raise taxes, but we didn't tell them they have the power to make beaches. So that states, that's your job, at least at
Okay. So now I understand why you said who was the one who wrote it?
James Madison.
Yeah.
Now I understand, because you were like, Madison didn't want to write this. He thought it's a self-evident sort of thing.
Right.
But that do you know historically if that was added for like a reason? Like, did somebody like immediately go like
it was added because the entire the southern states mostly, who were the adamant defenders of adding the Bill of Rights in the first place, were all like, no, it's not clear. And he was like, it's clear, dudes. And they were like, no, it isn't, because they're super scared of the federal government taking away their slaves, etc. So
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's also worth noting, just because these do have I feel that lawyers, if we were sorting jobs, would be put into Ravenclaw just based on sort of like Ravenclaw or Gryffindor.
Because you can
It's
take
all about
both
that paperwork,
sides.
baby.
You take both sides. It's not about fairness. It's about what your client wants. And judges should all be Hufflepuffs, but they're not.
Why do you think judges should be Hufflepuffs?
Because fairness
That's true.
is the key aspect of being a
for
judge.
Sure. Like Ravenclaws want to get shit done, and Hufflepuffs want to get shit done, and there's no hard feelings at the end.
They're hard workers and they gotta be fair.
Yeah, I'm just thinking I feel like the Ravenclaw with like, I don't know. I feel
like all patent lawyers are Ravenclaws.
Oh my god, I feel like this is another podcast, but patents are the most evil thing in the world.
They can be.
No, they're ridiculous because they hold back the process of technology, of like innovation.
I wouldn't say patents, the idea of patents,
right?
But
that's what I'm getting at.
But what they are allowing people to patent and do with those patents is definitely, like you said, it's awful.
I want to kick him in the the button.
It should be very much like a stand on the shoulders of giants sort of things with patents, but instead it's no, we built a wall. You now have to walk around
Stop,
it.
yeah, stop letting people patent like this tiny gear that's in everything. Stop that.
Anyway, Amendment 10.
I would say this one's this one is a Ravenclaw, because it's definitely like a loophole closer. It's like we're covering all our bases here, people.
Right.
We're thinking everything out methodically. So
It's pretty systematic.
Yeah.
It's just going like, guys, this should be fairly cut and dry.
Right.
But in case it's
Like,
not for you
we're
dummies.
we're laying this one out.
Yeah. Okay. Explanatory. It's an explanatory clause that's just like, if you didn't get it the first time, losers, this is.
Yeah,
the,
it's definitely the most condescending of these. So, like, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
All right. 10. Sorted. Great.
Hell yeah.
Amendment 9.
You read, Michael?
Sure, I can read it. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage other retained by the people.
All right, please explain to me what that means.
Okay. So oddly enough, this amendment doesn't have that much. At least we didn't learn very much case law about it. But really, what this means is that if the Constitution specifies that people have certain rights, the fact that it states certain rights in it explicitly, like let's say the right to a jury, the fact that it says you have the right to a jury, but doesn't say you have the right to wear a hat. This means this is not saying that because we didn't tell you have the right to wear a hat, that means you don't have the right. So things that just because we've said you have rights 1 through 17 doesn't mean that there are other rights we didn't talk about that you
that
don't
sounds
have.
like sweet and dorky Hufflepuff.
For sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It also, it's strange in that it kind of falls into a similar category of 10, but different in the fact of like, if we didn't say this, like it goes to this, but that's speaking specifically to like the powers of the the Constitution's laying out, and this is speaking more to the people within the Union.
Oh yeah, that's probably the framing I'm getting, because before, like 10 is like systematic. It's potentially like the system of government infringing on the rights of the people, and this one seems to be speaking more to the individual's rights.
A little, yeah. Mm-hmm. That seems. Right now, we're rocketing through this.
Oh yeah.
Well, our intro was 2 hours long.
Like Freddie Mercury.
Yeah. There's no stopping us. So now
Call
we're
me
on
Mr.
to 8.
Fahrenheit.
Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fine imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted.
Yeah, we do a good job of that in this country. All right.
No, I am so on Katie's bandwagon. This is one of the most important amendments, especially if you are into criminal justice reform.
Yeah, this
is a Hufflepuff. I want to say Hufflepuff because it's treating all people with fairness. That's the whole idea. One of the phrase unusual punishments, part of what that's been meant to mean is like, your punishment for possessing cocaine is 5 years in prison. However, your punishment for possessing cocaine is swim the English Channel. Like that's
you have to have you have to have a set standard of punishment. And honestly, I don't know. Do we just take everything at face value, or are we going to then reflect it onto the culture in which it's being used right now?
I think we can view it through both lenses.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that we are when it comes to Amendment 2.
Oh God, yeah, you can't.
And 1 for that matter. But
yes,
but this
but
one
I
is
feel
also,
like 2 is the most divisive, at least presently.
This one is probably the most divisive, not probably to people's like ordinary lives, but within the like. The way that the justice system works right now, it's super unfair and biased against certain groups.
Yep.
Right. Drug offenders are
minorities.
Like white cocaine offenders.
Oh my God.
Are going to get usually a slap on the wrist compared to people who have like crack cocaine of the same amount.
Yep.
If they happen to be black or Latino.
And the whole scheme of mandatory minimums was designed on its face. It was claimed that it was going to remove the unusual unfair punishments, because some judges, because you'd get one guy going into one judge and getting, 3 months in jail, and you'd get another guy. And so they were like, oh, you can't have these different sentences. So everyone's got to do. But it turns out the people with the really high mandatory minimums were crack cocaine users.
Yep.
Right. That's sort of in line with, for those of you who have never listened to the podcast More Perfect, which is a spin-off from Radiolab.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the Batson challenges, which is, if you're unfamiliar, the basic idea is there are, within a court of law, when jury selection is taking place, there are peremptory dismissals of jurors.
Mm-hmm.
And it changes state by state. X amount of jurors may be dismissed with providing no reasoning for it. However,
just like by the looks of you.
Well, just for like whatever goddamn reason you feel
you
like.
could literally say that person has mean eyebrows.
And so we're dismissing them. However, after this one particular case with a man named Batson involved, where the I think it was the prosecutor dismissed like exclusively black jurors.
Yeah.
It then was taken all the way to the Supreme Court, where basically, if it is believed by the opposing side that jurors are being dismissed on the basis of race, they can call a Batson challenge, and the lawyer has to then state what it is that is not racially based.
About this entire group of people they just dismissed.
Well,
who all happen to be
individually.
Oh.
They need to state like this person is living in this lower income something, so clearly they don't have an understanding of like this component.
Nothing obviously intrinsically tied to their race.
Right.
They're like dancing around it.
Well, and that's what effectively happened. So Batson became instituted within the court system and
immediately worked around.
And then all the lawyers were like, all right, here's how we play against
prosecutor
the tide on
training.
this.
Yeah, prosecutor training specifically being like, all right, so if you want to dismiss someone because they're black, like say I don't want them because they're from this neighborhood, and that's probably going to play bad.
Yeah.
So they just work around it. In the cases that they have actually used the Batson challenge, there's like they got the prosecutor's notes, and it was like black guy cross out, like so they were writing it down.
Jesus.
So they just told him stop doing that. Don't write it down anymore.
Yeah. So there are some broken things in our legal system.
And I just want to say he mentioned More Perfect. This does not reflect on the views of my two hosts. You can direct all your internet rage to me if you want, but listen before you, or even if you have decided your opinion on the death penalty, listen to the episode of More Perfect. I think it's More Perfect, The Machinery of Death.
Go to moreperfectpodcast.com, put in the promo code Al Tippin.
And if it's not More Perfect, then it is the podcast Amicus or Amicus by Slate. But the episode is called The Machinery of Death, and I hope it makes you rethink your stance on the death penalty, which is being challenged. Why it's relevant under the 8th Amendment is why how people are trying to get rid of it. So.
On its face, I'm like, this is Hufflepuff as hell. This is making sure that, like, even though you're a criminal, you still are a human with basic civil rights.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that that's fairly applied. So I would probably Slytherin it if we're gonna put it into the context to which it exists in America.
In a modern context, you think it's?
I don't think that's fair, because I think it's more ignoring it.
Yeah.
Than it is the amendment itself. You can ignore the rules, but that doesn't make the rule itself.
Right. I think
so. It's a Hufflepuff being used by Slytherins.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, I don't even think being used by Slytherins is correct. Being omitted,
ignored, or explained away.
Right. Because I feel this amendment in and of itself is like trying to just smooth out all the wrinkles, but
it's stopping people from just being monsters,
right? Which is helpful and should definitely be something that is cited far more frequently. I feel though we've sorted it.
Yeah.
Moving on to 7, moving on up. In suits at common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20.
at the time of way more
Way more
exorbitant.
money back then.
The right of trial.
1791, by the way,
Right.
when that was ratified. So that's what $20 in $1791.
We can do some math and figure out what.
No, they can.
They can. Yeah. All right. So in the suits at common law where the value of in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law.
So the common law, for those of you who are not familiar with law, is what is known as judge-made law. It's when judges rule on either just the general, like, legal universe or interpretations of certain laws that exist. But, you know, there are a lot of areas of law, for example, torts, which is like if you punch someone in the face, there's a criminal side, but there's also like, I'll sue you for punching me in the face. That's a tort. Most of that law is dictated entirely by judges being like, you know, back in England, because we absorbed England's old, like 400, 500 years old worth of judges just being like, this is how this goes. This is how this goes. Refined on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
That's what common law is. And common law is only superseded by when the legislature says we have a law now. So if you used to say, you know, assault is punching someone in the nose. If California passes a law saying, no, you have to stab someone for it to be assault, they have now overruled the common law.
Oh.
If they say like for tort, they'll say like for tort purposes, assault must be stabbing. Like that would be overruling the common law of assault.
That's why in situations like debate, they spend so much time defining terms, because if you don't have a definition of your terms and you don't have an agreement on them, then you have arguments that potentially can both be correct based on the government and opposition side.
Yes.
Like not, because then they're like, oh, it's crazy.
So the common law is generally, that's the default. It's like, oh, you haven't defined this term, then we're going to look at the common law to know. The common law has definitions of legal things. Like when you're thinking of a law, like a rule, the common law has rules about like what that means. And when you write a law that's really vague, the common law tends to define it. They'll say, what does this word mean? They didn't put a definition when they wrote the law.
Right.
You just generally assume that unless it specifically contradicts the common law, it's to be read.
It's just saying you should go with the default if there is no asterisk next to the word effectively.
Right.
It is also worth noting, based on the time spent explaining this, I checked a very quick inflation calculator.
Oh yeah, how much was that back then?
Well, it wouldn't let me scale any further back than 1913. But
that's not good. That's like 200 years.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that, but even then, putting $20 for 1913 comes out to $490.58. So obviously, the
Not
number's going to be
amount of money.
pretty high.
Why has it never been updated to be like the amount? Like, can you?
What was the year? It was 1781.
1791.
1791.
So let me put the amendment into, we haven't actually discussed the lay terms of the amendment.
Right.
So I just defined what the common law is for you lay people. But basically what it means is, other than when your state legislatures or the federal government makes rules saying like, this is like how this, like, let's say that they make a rule about what battery is, and battery is like when you hit someone. That's if there's no law about that, the common law obviously has a rule there.
Yeah.
So they're saying when it's based on the common law, and it's above a certain amount of money, you get a right to trial by jury. And the reason why they always say like jury verdicts are jury verdicts, like that's what they are. And we don't have judges. Judges don't, when you appeal a case, the judges are almost never like, well, the jury decided that wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's only in very rare cases do they do it, and that's where this comes from. So this is saying like judges aren't supposed to redecide jury verdicts, and it's or just facts in general. When a jury says we decide a specific fact, they're not supposed to challenge it usually, and so it's pretty much just protecting your general right to jury in a lot of suits.
But what does that mean in the case of an appeal? Because isn't that sort of flying in the face of that, or am I misunderstanding?
They don't consider, because appeals generally do not consider facts. They consider legal errors, whether or not there was a procedural error in how your trial was presented or how your rights were protected, or whether or not an error of applying the law was made. That's almost entirely what appeals are. There are rare cases where it's like, this jury convicted someone and there was no evidence, all they presented was a piece of paper signed by a person we never saw saying this person murdered someone. That's not enough. It's so rare for a jury for a judge to say that's not enough evidence. So that's usually what it just means that they generally don't consider appeals at a trial at all, because facts aren't being decided.
Gotcha. Okay. Just wanted to verify. And that also clues into how little I know about the judicial system.
And you need to know this because we're going to get to the double jeopardy clause, and that is going to have to do with appeals as well. And just so you know, they decided that appeals don't, like, even if a conviction is overturned or reaffirmed, they've already said that that's not double jeopardy, but we'll get to that in a second.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Also worth noting, if you've never gotten a chance to sit on a jury, I got the opportunity in February of last year, and guys, I wound up sitting in on
a very juicy story that he can only tell me after he was legally allowed to.
This is the best.
It
story.
is. So I apologize because
we should do a mini episode.
Yeah, we can't talk about it because it's too long.
I can give you like the bare bones of it. So it was figuring out the amount of money that was owed to a wife who was assaulted. That was like an agreed upon fact by both the husband and the wife. So we were, the jurors, figuring out how much money this woman was to be awarded for damages.
For being
both
hit. That's such
psychological
a weird thing.
And physical. Psychological and physical damages. We had to figure out the amount of money. But the story that led to all of this is crazy. And the defense attorney pitched it as such, of like, we need to take this back. There's a guy. Okay, so
honestly, I'm saying if you should do this as like a 20-minute mini episode, just like connected to this one.
This is too juicy to like only get the bullet points from.
Yeah, the
Michael.
Reader's Digest version will not cut it, you guys.
Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. After this podcast, I'm going to just check right after. It's going to be released as a Sorting Hat bonus, and there's going to be no sorting. It's just going to be me explaining the story,
because you should sort all the people in the cases.
They're all terrible people. They're all terrible people. Like, it's
worth it to listen.
I'm so sorry for just teasing this and now moving on.
We haven't even
check
sorted
out the bonus because we're not even halfway through.
Yeah, we have to sort the Seventh Amendment.
Okay, great. The Seventh Amendment. Sorry, guys.
It's just protecting the trial by jury, which is Ravenclaw.
It's Ravenclaw or Hufflepuff
because
for
me.
It's
saying protecting the right of people, a jury. Whether or not you think that's like fair or not. Like,
actually, for that very reason, it might be a Gryffindor because it's being incredibly noble in that moment of like, look, we have to defend the people. Like, they might be morons, but like, this is we can't give it to the judge on this one.
I
right?
also love that the word speedy is being used. It's a very cute word to be in such a serious like legal document.
Oh,
speedy.
You mean for?
Am I skipping?
You're skipping amendments right now.
Oh crap!
That's okay.
Yeah. So
there's
sorry.
a lot that have to do with
7.
with juries and trials.
Yeah. Yes, there are. 7 is
But I'm not crazy on that, right? Like, it seems pretty noble as far as its standing goes.
Well, like, yeah, I guess the notion that like a group of people deciding the facts is like better than one person deciding the facts. I want to say actually either Gryffindor or Hufflepuff because you're talking about trust.
Right.
Trust of a group of people.
Yeah.
But I want to say it's naive and trusting and brash, sort of, to be like, yeah, a group of normal ass people are going to understand this law. So I'll say Gryffindor.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like it could go in so many different directions. Also, I input it into a different calculator, and the number was $491.41 when adjusted for inflation.
For that year?
From 1791, $20 brought up to 2017 comes out to $491.
I did not change on the other one from 1913. I don't trust either of these.
I think what happened is it just after a certain year doesn't tell you that
I don't know.
Doesn't calculate.
I'm going off of what the internet's telling me.
Either way, it's
also,
more money than I will ever see in my life.
Is there
and I'm talking about $20.
Is there anything in this, not to like slow us down too much on this point, but on Amendment 7, based on the inclusion of this weird $20 factor that might move the needle to anything else?
You might. I think that's why it's less Hufflepuff and more Gryffindor, because a Hufflepuff would be like, it doesn't matter how much money you have, a judge's time is never wasted. Like you should have a jury always. Whereas a Gryffindor is like, we can't waste our time. We have to do what's important. And the whole $20 thing, like that's what small claims court is. Like,
right.
You can't have a lawyer. It's not that you don't, like all these other cases, you have the right to have a lawyer. Affording one's a different issue. But in small claims court, you literally cannot bring one.
Gotcha.
So
we're sticking with Gryffindor.
Yes.
All right. Jumping on to 6.
And I just want to know, I know there are probably some people who might be legally educated and might be like, you should be sorting the clauses of each amendment individually because they're all considered so separately. That is true, but we don't have time for that right now. We're just doing the
Ravenclaws.
We're doing the whole kit and caboodle.
And we're not going to release a bonus where we're discussing the clauses.
Because unless somebody needs help going to sleep every night.
Right.
Bow, bow, bow.
So, Amendment 6.
Yes.
In all
beautiful amendment.
In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial.
That's what I was talking about before.
By an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation.
He's getting so hard right now, you guys.
To be confronted with the witness against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense.
Or her defense.
Yes. Yeah. No.
And Katie just did the cutest pose after she.
I was delighted with myself.
I'm adorable. I'm Katie Reed.
Oh, and then I stick my finger in my cheek dimple. I don't have one.
If you drive that finger in hard enough, you'll make a dimple.
God. And bleed everywhere.
It is definitely worth modifying all the gender pronouns in this because the authors were super sexist.
Oh gosh, honestly, I don't have time to get into how sexist like how fucked up everyone was at that time.
Oh God, yes. Unless you're saying only men can be charged with crimes. Only people who identify as his can be charged with crimes, which I don't know that they would want. They would have wanted that.
No, considering
his wife cut his head off. Well, it only says.
I love this. Let's run with this.
Katie's rethinking everything right now.
Purge. Second day of my period. Yes.
What Pandora's box have I opened?
Yeah, all of you cisgender dudes might not understand. The second day of your period is the most heavy metal of them all. It's the most rager.
Noted.
Uh-huh.
So, speedy and public trial. There's a lot to unbox within this one.
The next three amendments have a lot of subparts, etc. to them. But so this one is basically it's speedy and public trial. It's why for most cases you get to have news. Like I can walk into pretty much any courtroom and sit down and watch a trial.
Now, is that in favor to be like, I need something to do? Let's give something to the public. They can just come watch this.
No, it's so that they don't have secret shit kangaroo court.
Yeah.
What does
BS.
kangaroo court mean? And does it involve hopping, adorable animals who can punch you in the face?
I can tell you right now, the last part of that question is no.
Crud.
But to give the definition of kangaroo court.
So I only have heard the original. So I've heard a podcast that claimed to define the origin of kangaroo court is actually that it was events that were happening in Australia where they were like going crazy and doing these show trials. But kangaroo court, what it means to the general population nowadays, sorry, I bumped the mic, is just a like ridiculous. It's a show. It's like you're watching a theater piece. It's not a real trial.
And so it's exploitive. So nothing. Yeah,
yes,
it's basically
absolutely. It's a very bad thing.
Don't do this. Just like to shame the person
You
who's on
would
trial.
say Chicago, the like Billy Flynn's courtroom trial was like borderline kangaroo court,
right? Or the ones where they're a clearly innocent person, but everyone is like, no. And they're like, here's the evidence that no, get out. No, like when it's incredibly unfair and everyone knows that the trial is just so that people are like, well, at least they had a trial.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, would you go so far to say that the Salem witch trials were kangaroo court?
Oh, absolutely. And actually, this is an unpopular opinion, but a lot of lawyers, not just conservative lawyers, believe that the Nuremberg trials were a kangaroo court.
Oh no, I could definitely.
Oh, yeah.
I could definitely see that.
There
was
was
no
no
reason for it to have as much spectacle to it as it ended up having.
Right, and also they didn't really listen to the defenses. Not the I was ordered to, but like just in general, people who showed up in front of the court, they were just like,
yeah,
I don't care.
You had entire nations who had lost people getting to try the people responsible for that.
Right, they didn't care.
And like the most of the very big people in charge had offed themselves or disappeared into South America.
Right.
So by the time it got to finding any of them, it was like, fuck
it was like, well,
you.
we got to do something.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
You have the whole pain of the Holocaust coming down on you, buddy.
Right. So that's why it's public.
Oh, I have a question about that.
Mhm.
No, I know there are sometimes like I was watching. I'm saying this like a brag. I was watching the O.J. Simpson documentary.
Right.
Everybody watch that.
She's pretty fancy because she was able to pay for it with the $20 that she doesn't get.
They talked about how it would have been like the whole glove thing fitting would have gone better if they had not, number one, done it publicly. If they'd been like, we'll go and just sit, he'll try it on without the latex glove on, and it just he wouldn't be able to showboat for the cameras that it didn't fit. How are those like more private examinations of evidence permissible in court through this constitutional amendment?
Because so there's the whole trial itself, and then there's like the legal questions of admissibility of evidence, etc. It's fully allowed for people to do certain things in private in order to avoid prejudicing or influencing the decision.
Yeah.
So some things that can be considered too prejudicial or too like should not be public, like certain legal rulings and certain documents reviewed, etc., can be done outside the presence of the jury, even, and outside the presence of the media. But I mean, the courts have ruled, like for example, that juvenile adjudications, which aren't trials because they don't get juries and they aren't called trials, adjudications are generally private. Like you can't come in and be like, report on a. They don't let people just come in and sit down, and that's the courts have just decided like for safety and fairness and all these. There's a lot of other considerations that just override it.
Okay.
And impartial jury is part of it because that's when they change counties and stuff,
right?
Because they have to. And then, the district is just like they decide what constitutes an area where the crime committed. The other ones, informed of the accusation, obviously to tell you why you're being tried. Confronted with the witnesses against them is a big one because that's the whole like the person who accused you of the crime. You have the right to have them in the courtroom being like, oh, you're the person who said that I did it during a trial. You have that right. You have compulsory process is just saying, giving someone a subpoena and saying you have to show up at court on this date or you can be arrested. And then assistance of counsel. Now, originally the assistance of counsel was not until like 1960 something. The assistance of counsel just meant that you had the right to pay for a lawyer and have one there if you wanted. The original, it just meant that they couldn't tell me I couldn't hire a lawyer.
Oh my gosh.
That's all that it meant.
I had no idea.
It just meant you could, if you had the money, you could pay for one. And then there was a case in like the 30s where these black kids were on a train and then this woman said that they like assaulted and raped her. And then later came out was like, no, I was lying. It literally didn't happen. And then but one of the kids was like trying to hire a lawyer and he was like, I'm communicating with my family's lawyer. He's on his way. And the judge was like, we're not going to wait for him. Dink. You're like had the whole trial before his lawyer could even get there. And they were like, well, you can't do that. He has a right. That was where they clarified. They're like, yeah, he has the right to have an attorney present if he wants one. And that's where they fully clarified that right. But that just means you used to only be able to have a lawyer if you could afford one. And now...
Was that the Scottsboro boys trial?
Yes, maybe. That name sounds familiar.
Based on what you're saying, it's like there are a few terms that are tipping me in various directions.
So I would say as it's written, the whole assistance of counsel thing, very different than today. Because today we have the beautiful decision that assistance of counsel means if you can't pay for one, you have to be given one anyway.
Right.
That's like a Hufflepuff addendum onto what is just like, hey, if you can afford a lawyer, you have to be able to get one. So,
well, it's like, so speedy and public trial seems like as like very Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's like everybody should be able to see, this is our way of like checking what is going to be going down.
Should be fast. Yeah.
Should be fast. Like the speedy part, speedy part I could argue is like Ravenclaw or Gryffindor or even Slytherin, just on like, we're trying to be straightforward with this.
And not waste any resources of the court. Yeah.
But like the public trial aspect is like very Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
When you look to impartial juror, that's still sticking Hufflepuff, like fairness. That's right there. The
district wherein the crime thing is all just like why
it's the
San Francisco can't try you for a crime that you committed in Los Angeles. That's really what it means.
Which makes sense.
That's just like a logical.
Right.
But it also means like, because if you get tried in San Francisco and you live in Las Vegas or whatever, you would go to a San Francisco prison, right? Or would you?
If you'll wherever the county is that you were convicted, that's where you.
Because then, especially if you're someone who's now a felon and you no longer have your, you would lose your, you would be going to prison there. You would become like an indentured servant to that county, right?
I mean, what we're saying is you should commit crimes in areas that are like more beneficial to you if you get caught.
I was just saying, my point was like, it's a good rule to have in place because then it can't be like pulling people from other communities to go do slave labor in that community.
Yeah.
Well, if you're sent to prison, all the prisons are they're all like state run.
Uh-huh.
So it like you do end up, like if you commit crimes in Los Angeles, you can end up in Lancaster is the prison that serves LA County, but men get transferred to prisons all over the country. I mean, all over the state all the time.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
you can commit a crime in Los Angeles County, and I know this for a fact, and get transferred to, let's say, Avenal State Prison up in near Kern County. I think it's actually north of Kern County. But so you don't actually have to serve your prison sentence in the county in which you're committed.
Mm-hmm.
But the jurors, pulling the jurors from there is a big deal. It's like
Gotcha.
your community should be the ones.
I feel like everything about this is
Hufflepuff for
Yeah,
sure.
I know.
Hufflepuff.
Like it's
Like,
cut and dry.
yeah, just
yeah.
as we've been unboxing it more and more, like if we just go through like each set of terms, you're like fair, like at
Mhm.
least the intent behind it.
And this should be something that we then should be careful of with like, because we don't want to Hufflepuff this across the board if it's not necessarily
Right.
the right
I mean,
decision. But
right.
this is all about like the fairness of the laws of the land.
And
Although
specifically the accused of a crime.
Yeah.
I was thinking a little bit in regards to that last part of assistance of counsel for defense. I saw that as a bit of a Ravenclaw
Mhm.
Yes.
in the fact that it's like, hey, we've got these de facto law people that should always be by your side. Like that seems to me a value of wisdom
Yeah.
and a value of just like the understanding and knowledge around the thing, like, and the location and space.
Yeah,
which
but
you're
even then,
operating.
it still seems like the most Ravenclaw Hufflepuff in
Right.
Hufflepuffs.
Because Raven, like at the time it was like, yeah, Ravenclaw, and they weren't thinking about money
Yeah.
because they didn't care about
Right,
it.
right,
'Cause-
right.
None of them had to.
and the Ravenclaws, as you have said before on this podcast, a lot of them tend to be higher socioeconomic classes, maybe because of intelligence tends to get you better jobs, I guess, in the wizarding world.
Well,
maybe.
yeah, and sometimes you just have better access to education that gives you that intelligence,
Yeah.
Right.
that perceived intelligence to the community that
Right.
seems valuable.
Exactly.
Oh, that's getting into that whole nature versus
No.
nurture argument.
Katie makes a good point. And
I don't find a car mechanic who knows the inside and outside of every car, but makes like 10 grand a year or whatever, versus a lawyer who just happened to go to a prestigious school. They might have equal intelligence, it's just in different fields.
Oh,
Guys,
absolutely.
if Goodwill Hunting told me anything,
Einstein
it's that it-
himself.
Yeah.
That was that famous Einstein quote, was like, if you a fish swimming, you can call it a genius, but if you ask a fish to climb a tree, then you call it an idiot.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're still at Hufflepuff
Yeah.
with
Es-
6.
Especially with the assistance of counsel as defined in modern meaning.
Right. Let's jump into
To
5, which is another fairly meaty.
Very powerhouse amendment. It should be everyone's favorite amendment, because, and you'll know why in a second.
All right. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on the presentment or indictment
Yeah, you got that one.
indictment
Yes.
of a grand jury,
Killed it.
except
Weird
in
French
cases
pronunciation.
in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just
Plead
compensation.
the fifth.
Now, an
That is-
addendum to what I just said. It should be everyone's favorite amendment within the Bill of Rights,
Right.
because the 14th Amendment should be everyone's favorite amendment, period.
You freaking nerd.
But the 5th within the Bill of Rights, you'll find it's the most important because it's the only reason why your state can't take away your freedom of speech.
Mhm.
Without the 5th Amendment, California could say, you can't, we could pass a law saying you can't tell a person that his shirt is untucked, and you'll go to prison if you do it.
Whoa.
And
It's a pretty tame law to pass, but
we'll
man,
get
oh
there.
man.
we'll get there.
Can I also just say, can you, both of you, see how flushed I am just from reading
Yeah,
that?
oh
Oh
God,
no, this is
it's
definitely the
so-
one that it's like when does the sentence? Oh no, there's another comma.
Yeah.
What the?
Yeah,
This should have been multiple
like,
amendments.
I'm
the
doing
idea
co-
that this was one is
I'm
like,
doing
what?
cold readings of this, and this is like it's one of those things when you do cold readings, you immediately are like more hyper, like you're
aware
like,
of, like,
I am finding these words as I'm. What is this word? Where is this going?
You usually
Semicolon.
you would never like fluster at the word indictment, but even then you're like, huh?
Yeah, I just was like, is that the word indictment? Is it that really? There's a C in like what? Also, this is giving me weird, just like, I mean, and it happens every year, but if you've ever been to a Passover Seder, you pass around the Haggadah and you read from it. Each person reads a passage, at least at my family anyway.
Yeah.
And everybody just is like, I hope I don't have the rabbis with the strange names because I'm just worried I'm going to mispronounce them.
Do you get razzed, or is it more serious if you mess up a name?
It's really not, because it's all family, at least in my family anyway. We're all cool with it, reading Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer and all those names.
Shout out to those rabbis.
Hey man, they spent all night trying to figure out whether, the plagues were 40-fold or 50-fold in nature or 10-fold. They were breaking down the Torah verse. It was pretty great.
The Torah verse. I've never heard that.
Oh man,
I'm a Gentile.
I want to say
very much so.
Big burn on the authors of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights for deciding that we had to, not only are you not allowed to have separate sentences within each of the amendments, they all are trashed together. And they were like, well, no, we're not going to make 4 amendments out of this one phrase, and we're not going to just put periods in there.
It's semicolons.
Guys, come on. 10 is a good round number. We're probably going to stop it here, so let's make sure we get everything in. Yeah.
Other countries will laugh at us if our revolutionary,
11.
heretofore unexisting document within the entire world has an odd number of amendments.
11, that's fucking weird. No, make 5 like a bunch of things.
It's just the constant commas, constant semicolons, and you're just rolling through it all. This is it's dense.
And we learned our lesson because when we drafted Japan's constitution, we made it 1 billion pages. So.
No, it is really weird. There's a lot of stuff in here because it's the double jeopardy thing, but it's also the fact that you can choose not to self-incriminate yourself, and those are 2 very different things that are both very vital to the judicial system.
I'm gonna say right now, the whole grand jury thing sounds like it's a fairness, but the grand juries really are jokes as they exist, and I don't see any description that they were ever otherwise. So I don't think they're actually fairness. They're they're hardly anything.
What's the difference?
The grand jury is is a group of people. I think it might be every year. I don't actually know a lot of the mechanics of it, but every year they have a professional group of people. They are the grand jury. It might be every 6 months or whatever. So
it's an all-star game, but for jurors.
Yeah, it's a lot of them are apparently ex-cops and retired people who can.
Ooh, I would not want to be
people who can sit on juries professionally, and they call these people up whenever they want to get an indictment, whenever they have charges and they want to file an indictment. So they and this was a big deal in the Ferguson case, is the prosecutor gets to present whatever evidence they want, and they can call the defendant into the room. His lawyer cannot be there. His or her or their lawyer cannot be there.
What? Why?
They can say, I need to confer with my lawyer, and walk outside and
this
speak.
Is bonkers.
It's literally just the prosecutor putting on whatever evidence they want to show probable cause, and that's it. That's what it's for. It's not for the defense to show their case. It's just for the prosecutor to be like, I have this evidence. You should. And the famous phrase is, a prosecutor could indict a ham sandwich.
Yeah.
And that's real.
Why did it get to the point where somebody who is the entire reason that lawyers exist is that normal working people don't understand every facet of the law. So to what end did we end up in a process where you can literally not have your defense lawyer in the room?
Because other lawyers got crafty.
Because I guess they're just well, they could be there for the trial, and that's really what matters.
Good God.
Yeah. So it's very easy when you have all the whole cops not being indicted. It part of it can be the prosecutor just didn't try hard enough, because they get to choose they have absolute discretion with what evidence to show, but also in their defense, grand juries, regardless of what they show, like often do not and almost never like indict cops, period. So it's a rare instance.
I'm like, because like, okay, I will put it out there. I have a bias against cops. So the idea of a cop being on, especially on a jury in which you're working with like evidence, usually procured by law enforcement, that just seems like trouble.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's why you have those peremptory challenges.
And yet being a cop is not itself cause.
Really?
Yeah, you can be a cop and not be. All they have to do is be like, "Can you be fair?" And you say, "Yes."
Well, right.
Of course I can.
But a lawyer in the juror selection can just be like, "I don't want cops in."
Yes, that
like, and they can dismiss them purely based on
right. They can do that. However, you only get a limited number.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you get this is a legal term of art, buttload of people who either are cops or have cop family or,
Right. And then you have to just make the call of, do I want a cop on the jury of a cop related indictment, or do I want somebody who is clearly unfair in their, all the questioning. Which
so let's. I'm not usually one to derail side tangents when they're fun.
No, I know we're spending a while on this.
This one
because it's complicated.
This one is not.
It's also worth noting we're on 5 right now, and we've still got 4 more, and we're like an hour in.
Some of them, hour.
Yeah.
Maybe we should split this into a 2-parter.
Some of them will be fast.
No, man, we're gonna knock these out.
Yeah, some of them will be fast.
Guys, welcome to the movie of
the problem with this one is there are so many different parts that like don't necessarily mesh with their sorting. Like the whole grand jury thing, maybe fairness, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could even say if they knew grand juries were show trial, it's a Slytherin thing because they're just like trying to placate you while getting their goals.
Honestly, this whole thing, because it's so much going on, it's like it feels like a lot of plate spinning. I'm gonna say Slytherin for number 5.
I can't side with that just because in this is the due process of law clause, is the life, liberty of property one, is the double jeopardy clause, is the takings clause, which is how if the government demolishes your house to build a soccer stadium, they have to pay you. And so I'm going to say the due process of law is like the super core fairness issue.
I'm of the mindset that this is a Gryffindor. I feel like this is like,
maybe. Yeah.
I feel like this is them just going like, slam dunking repeatedly on like, these are things that you should care about. These are things that you should care about. These are things that you should care about. And this is what we're doing about like all of these things. They're just.
And here's some like little caveats which might be questionable or sinister.
They're like very aggressive law dunks.
Yeah.
And also lay people, some people, actually not even just lay people, but people might disagree with me, for example, in saying that allowing a person accused of murder to not have to say anything, maybe that's not fair. To some people, they might think that's not fair.
That is kind of why I'm also feeling that it's not Hufflepuff, is because we're actually biasing stuff. We're trying to bias stuff in favor.
If you go back to the O.J. Simpson documentary, which I had the $20 to watch because I have a Netflix account. Is that where it's on? Or is it on HBO? Either way, I have access to both accounts.
It was an FX show, so it probably came to Netflix.
I watched it at my partner's house. I have no idea how he pays for it. Either way, the Furman's a great example of somebody not good using their Fifth Amendment rights, because he had these tapes where he was saying all sorts of racist stuff. And also the part where they straight up wanted to ask him, did you plant evidence at O.J. Simpson's house? And a lot of people are like, in that case, even, you would have just been like, no, I did not.
Right.
But instead, he pled the Fifth.
Which makes things seem pretty suspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing because the plead the Fifth element does
not exist in civil law.
Like, it strikes me as that in and of itself strikes me as a cunning move, which would make it a Slytherin. But I feel like all the other aspects of the Fifth Amendment.
I think it probably only feels sinister if there's already mounting evidence and they either just don't want to perjure themselves or they don't want to make it more like cut and dry.
I think though the core of what
Yeah.
choosing to remain silent is so you effectively can have your legal team.
Whereas on the other hand,
like-
I would probably tell anybody right now who's getting rounded up by ICE at their kids' soccer games, plead the fifth, motherfucker. Do not talk to anybody as much as you can.
I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give legal advice, but I will say what law professors have said a lot, which is just shut up.
Yeah.
When cops ask you questions, shut up.
From
That's
the
not
moment
legal
you
advice.
start,
That's just
don't talk to
professors
the
saying shut up.
cops.
Yeah.
Say, I would like a lawyer present. Do this.
The reason why, just I have to say this because we're talking about law stuff and I want to be a public defender. For all you people out there, the reason why somebody won't testify on their own behalf if they are innocent, one, because maybe they committed a crime in the past and then the lawyer's going to get up there and make them look like a nasty person for once having done something that's completely unrelated to the thing that they are accused of doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Two, if you've ever been cross-examined in a jury box by an aggressive attorney, they'll get you to trip up. They'll get you to say things you didn't mean to say. They'll get you to say things and be unsure of yourself. They'll make people who are telling the truth sound like they're lying, and that is literally their job, and it's what they're paid to do.
It is.
So that's why you don't have people testify unless they're perfect.
Just side tangent off of that side tangent. In regards to this trial, which I will do a bonus of, and you should definitely check out. However, if you are cross-examining, there's a way to properly cross-examine, and then there's a way to be a dick.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy who was the prosecutor on this trial that I watched could not have been more of a dick.
Which
And
you'll
it-
find out
and
more
it-
about in
well,
the bonus
it
episode.
just made us hate him because you can say, isn't like yes or no, da 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 da, whatever the question is. But if you then affix it with like true, like this person did every time needling, you just come to despise the person,
And
and
that's
it
what
makes you.
be accused of
Did
leading,
you
right?
not? For all the serial fans
And
out there.
It just comes off as snide, and you.
Oh yeah.
It makes your skin crawl, and
It's like, you bastard.
it's there's a way to cross-examine. There's a way to just ask questions.
Yeah.
And that guy was not asking them correctly.
So we're going Gryffindor.
Oh, for
the fifth.
Yeah.
sure.
All right,
Fourth
jump.
Amendment. I think this is going to be an easy one, actually.
Well, not
Fourth
for me to
Amendment.
read quickly.
No.
'cause
Oh,
it's-
let me take a stab at it.
All right, go for
All
it.
right.
You wanna? You can.
I got it pulled up right here. The right of the people to be secure in their persons' houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
All right, why weren't you reading these the whole time?
Yeah. Katie
Or-
just came in with the masterful rendition.
Or were you just like looking at this for
No,
a while
That
and
was
then
a cold read, baby. If you're, I'm looking for commercial representation. If you want me to sell the Constitution, I can do that. If you want me to sell Tide Detergent, I can do that. Let's sell out, baby.
God damn it, Katie.
I would hire.
Now, did I understand anything as I was reading it? No. So
Oh.
now let's take it to Tippin.
Right, certainly not.
So this is if you've ever watched Law and Order or literally any cop show and you've heard, oh, he got off on a technicality. This is the technicality, and it's worth noting this technicality is why a cop can't just be like, I didn't like the way that person looks at me, follow you home, kick in your door at 3 a.m,
Right.
and rifle through your entire house. That's a technicality.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he didn't get a warrant or had no reason to kick in your door, that's what they mean when they say a technicality.
And that's when you say, no, do you have a warrant? No, you may not enter my house. Also, that applies in most cases to car stops, right? If unless they can like literally see the crime being committed,
They can actually search your car if they have probable cause to do. It's one of the exceptions where you can do a warrantless search.
Mhm.
But the problem is what they do is they always get consent. They're always like, oh, you don't mind if I search? Or would you mind? So what?
They're vampires,
what
basically.
An officer will do
Yeah.
is they will ask you in the way that your teachers asked you to do stuff when you were a kid. You know, when you're, would you please pick that up? Meant
That was not a question.
meant pick that up, you little.
But in this case, they're asking you this, but you do have the right to say no.
Yes.
Do you have a warrant? And at that point, they need to then present you with their probable cause to search, right?
Right.
Yeah, you always have the right to say no. Even if they have the cause, they can just pull you out of the car and search, and then you didn't do anything.
Right.
So the problem is, obviously, there are people who cannot safely defy police. The issue being, if you agree to let the police do their thing, then later when they say, oh, we didn't have a reason, but they agreed to it. Because a policeman can ask to search you for no reason. And if you say, yeah, it's fine. So I think, so it's also worth noting that Justice Thomas and the late Justice Scalia of the Supreme Court
May
believed
he rest in hell.
they at least Thomas stated this in an opinion and Scalia signed on to it, that nothing in this actual thing that you just read ever requires a warrant for anything.
Oh, fuck.
They read it as, this says that if you do have a warrant, it has to be based on probable cause. But otherwise, search just has to be reasonable. They don't need a warrant. And every time, like, no other justices signed on to that, everyone was like, that's preposterous.
Yeah, that seems like a very weird interpretation.
They're like, because it's not connected grammatically. So every other justice is like, and so occasionally Thomas brings it up again. He's like, just as a reminder, I believe, and everyone's like, no, get out of here.
Scalia is just like garbage. He was a garbage person. He thought a reasonable defense for keeping gay marriage illegal was the fact that, well, we used to have it so flagpole sitting was illegal. Should we make that legal now too? It's like, what? What are you talking about?
I feel like
any logical jumps where you're like, if this is legal, doesn't that mean that this is
illegal?
It's like, that's a slippery slope
You're
argument.
marrying
Don't
your
pull
sister
that.
who's a turtle.
He was also the king of let the people decide, which is a noble sentiment. But when you're talking about the rights of human beings, like, for example, we as a country have long held the idea that like sodomy or homosexual acts should be illegal.
Right.
And we've been doing that for years. But that ignores the whole idea that, I mean, people say the Constitution was racist and that it was designed to protect slavery. And that is true. A lot of the whole Southern contingent made the whole thing. The rights of the minority cannot be infringed by the majority. And one of those rights happens to be slavery and the right to property, so that poor people can't take your house. But the way that works in our favor is that the minority, who happens to be, the LGBTQ community, they also are a minority whose rights should not be able to be taken away by the majority. And the whole idea that the federal government does not get to decide all the rules, that states get their own rules.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Also, why would you be making the argument of let the people decide when you are a justice on the Supreme Court? Why did you become a judge if you thought that you should be letting the people?
On that note, there are certain schools of thought more and very also that the Supreme Court's role in what they decide should be far more limited than it actually is. That's the whole idea.
I totally get that. Right. It just seems like an odd statement for a judge to be making when like literally one of your job descriptors is to be deciding things.
Have you listened to the More Perfect episode on the original like redistricting voting?
Oh yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Again, guys, listen to More Perfect.
More Perfect is if this is something that if you just want to disseminate law,
or even if this is confusing to you.
I mean, it's the folks behind Radiolab, and Radiolab is the pinnacle of exceptional podcasting.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
I
say the fourth is a Ravenclaw.
Yeah,
because it's like, dudes, let's make some rules for when we can go in people's houses. Come on, we all gotta know, right? Any objections?
No, because definitely, if anyone's gonna get flustered by someone coming in their house when they weren't ready, it's a Ravenclaw. Like they didn't know that you were coming over, and you just show up, and bust open the door.
I'm trying to figure out if any of these are going to go Slytherin. I'm scanning over these.
I have one.
There are Slytherin justifications for all of these because they were all slave owners. Purporting, actually, they were all slave owners, but like almost all of the people like staunchly supporting a lot of the Bill of Rights happen to be. The whole point was we are the states with little population because most of our population is enslaved persons who only counted for 3/5 of the vote.
Right.
So we want to make sure that the populous northern states don't get to vote out slavery. That's the whole idea behind the Electoral College.
Was 3/5 even a thing at the time this was drafted, though? Did they have any rights at that point?
It was not their voting rights. It was to calculate census for the
Like
purpose
population.
Oh, gotcha.
yeah, for the purpose of like how many representatives in Congress do you get? You know, that's
God.
so when they're counting, because the states were like, no, you can't just say free people because then we lose all our voting power. And they were like, all right, 3/5 of all enslaved people count for representatives. So Ravenclaw, were you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I would say Ravenclaw.
I'll concede Ravenclaw.
I can't see how this could be a Slytherin because it's just like,
no, I know it can't be, but I'm now like reevaluating everything because I feel like anyway, we're gonna.
Yeah, you might say there has to be a Slytherin one.
Yeah, I don't want to make that claim, but I feel like there is perhaps justification for at least one of these. It seems very odd that we've not landed on anyone yet, but maybe what's our next one? You're reading it, Katie.
Oh, okay, we're gonna go to Amendment 3. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by the law.
This one's pretty straightforward to me, of just like...
I love that this one had to exist because that means that somebody was trampling on the rights of people's house. The British were just like quartering themselves.
They were forcing people to have British soldiers in their house.
Yeah, this was definitely right.
A lot of, almost all of these, and the whole Constitution is informed by literally what the British were just doing to us.
Yeah.
They knew that we were about to or in the throes of war, so
they were just like,
they
put
were like,
soldiers in
and
their
then
house.
I like to imagine the circumstance to which we would get back to needing this to be enforced. Like what sort of like crazy ass domestic
an
war
invasion.
would we ever?
By the way, just so all you people can feel real safe, this is one of those articles that has not yet been applied to the states, meaning your state, if they have state troops like the state militia, which there are still state militias, the National Guard is debatable because it's like pretty much half federal. Mm-hmm. But if you had the California State Militia and California was like, these people get to live in your house, you don't, in a time of, this doesn't say, the California Constitution might say it, but as far as the federal Constitution goes, doesn't say anything about them forcing people to live in your house.
I hope nobody from the California state government is listening to this right now and getting ideas. Don't do it, you pieces of shit.
I mean, also,
sure, some of them are lovely.
Like,
what's the blue shield on this podcast, by the way? I've wanted to swear a lot.
Yeah, no, you're able to swear.
All right, fuck this.
He seemed so satisfied to be able to say a swear and not have to put a quarter in a jar.
But it is also worth noting, like, nobody is going to, or it is highly unlikely that militia members or military or whoever are going to be like, all right, time to take over that apartment complex. It's going to be, they'll want space. Like, right. I don't think any of us are at risk, but it's a crazy notion.
So I'm going to say this could be Slytherin, and here's why. Ooh. Because maybe you want to be free to like cook up your own rebellion and you don't want soldiers sitting in your house.
Huh.
Maybe. Like that, I feel like, I mean, the fact that
it's one of the ones that seems to be the most cunning. They're like,
it was like right about the time they were about to revolt. They were just like soldiers living in their house.
Yeah, I mean, this grants a civilian the right to turn away a soldier, correct?
But it says, but in a manner prescribed by law, meaning they can't just, there has to be laws saying when they can have a soldier take over your house. Mm-hmm. So
this definitely seems like one.
So they can take over your house, but it just has to be according to the law.
And also the fact that like,
like
the
martial
fact that
law.
no one thinks about the state law, about the state government being able to do that. That feels really like shifty to me.
Can I just blow your? I don't know if you. So do you have you don't know anything really about the constitutional rulings with the Bill of Rights?
No.
So just to blow your mind for a little, it wasn't until the mid to the early to mid 1900s, like 1930s to 1960s, that pretty much any of these rights applied against the states.
Whoa.
Because even with the 14th Amendment, they decided that what the 14th Amendment meant was there's a certain clause in the Constitution that says privileges and immunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
They decided it was called the slaughterhouse cases. They decided that what the privileges and immunities meant were the privileges and immunities granted to a citizen of a national government, meaning your ability to travel between states is protected, your ability to travel in navigable waters is protected, and there's like a couple other things, but that was it. Nothing about free speech, nothing about, so all these states could pass as long as their constitution allowed it, and we know how easily California amends their constitution.
Mm-hmm.
You could pass an anti-free speech law up until, the mid 1900s, and it would be totally fine. No, you could say no anti-Semitic speech, but you could also say no speech critical of any Republican candidate for any public office.
That's crazy.
And that was totally constitutional as far as the federal government was concerned. Until the Supreme Court was like, you know what? No, the 14th Amendment due process thing means that these rights apply, but not all the rights.
Nutty.
Yeah, not all the rights. It's called the incorporation. So they were incorporated into, and equal protection, by the way, is in the Fifth Amendment, has been what's called reverse incorporated. So the 14th Amendment says equal protection, and the judges said, this is so fundamental to American law that when they say due process in the Fifth Amendment, they mean equal protection is part of it. So now the Fifth Amendment, the federal government contains equal protection. Because remember, the 14th Amendment just says states. Doesn't say the federal government has to provide any equal protection.
I'm glad we're going backwards. This gets so much spicier as we go backwards.
Yeah. So
they came out. That means they came out hot when they introduced this. They were like, check this shit out. And there's like stuff at the bottom that you should also pay attention to.
Yeah. Third Amendment Slytherin?
Yeah.
It's just like,
I've been convinced.
You can't put stuff in your house, soldiers, but unless we write the law about it.
No, it feels like a secret secret Slytherin who is posing as a Ravenclaw. It's
right.
Like this just makes sense.
Same with the
people.
government takings thing is how they can act. They can take everything from you as long as they.
It's kind of curtailing ambitious overreach for the military.
But it allows you to prescribe by law, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's
making you feel comfortable.
Isn't there anything like more Slytherin than creating a law just to fuck other people over and then saying, well, it's the law.
Check your bias there, Katie.
I'm saying no, only because like they are cunning. They like use the system to their own advantage.
I happen to be a strong advocate of very like, I think the Slytherins are definitely not evil. I think it's what you value, and the people who want to identify as Slytherin, they value ambition and cleverness.
Right.
And ambitious people aren't going to want the government to be,
and the ability to do things strategically.
They're also
I guess it would be check the tone.
Yeah.
Check the tone.
I feel like my anti-Slytherin bias has been well in hand.
I think that J.K. Rowling didn't do a good job of describing what she herself like wanted sorting to be. Like that's why at the end Dumbledore's like, I think we did sorting all wrong. Like, and that was the whole thing about like Harry's. Oh yeah, you have.
I haven't read any of these books, by the way. If this is your first episode, I know nothing about Harry Potter.
One of Harry's kids ends up being like in the book. He's like, what if I'm a Slytherin? He's like, then we'll love you anyway, because one of the kindest, bravest men I know was a Slytherin.
I read the Cursed
Epilogue.
Child.
Oh.
Yeah, and I haven't read it, but one of them turns out to be a Slytherin, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it just means because it's always like what they value.
Right.
Hufflepuffs love hard work. They love fairness. They love, so it's like if you value ambition and cleverness, odds are you're at least ambitious. Mm-hmm. Most people aren't just like, I love ambition, but I myself don't.
Yeah, there are not many Los Angeles musicians in Slytherin.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say Slytherin.
Yeah, I feel good about that now, having kind of run through this mill.
Now we're about to get onto the movie.
All right, I'm gonna try to hold it in.
Pit
My fucking
spawn.
oh god, I hate
Okay.
this amendment so much.
Well, the interesting part about the Second Amendment is they only focus on.
It's all magic lies, guys.
Well, they only focus on the latter half of it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But the first half.
And the craziest part,
read it out.
the craziest part is it is the shortest. No, it's not the
let's
shortest,
read
but
it
it's like
out
the
and then-
second
Okay.
shortest.
This is what the Second Amendment says.
This is word for word.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Most people do not even hear the first half of what I said. They just hear the part where I got monotone. It was like, everybody gets a gun.
There's a famous justice.
It's also worth noting. I think it's safe to say that all of us are very liberally minded in this room. So
and
I don't even call myself a liberal. I'm left of liberal, guys.
I'm willing to be okay with your right to own a gun for personal defense, and possibly your right to like pick up a gun and take it with you hunting. But it doesn't mean you need the hunting gun all year round. But here's the thing.
Let's break down the terms.
Here's the thing. Supreme Court has said, previous Supreme Court justices have said the whole idea that this amendment entitles you to have a weapon for your personal use is a fiction.
Yeah.
And it is a fiction that was promulgated by the NRA, who said that this right specifically protects everyone's right to have a gun for their own protection. Now, there was a lot of debate at the time, about what this meant. Justice Scalia, when this was decided in 2000, it might even be 6 or 7, DC versus Heller, he said that the well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state wasn't like operative. It wasn't really, it wasn't supposed to affect the meaning of the second half.
Oh,
of
then
the
why is it
amendment.
all one sentence still?
And why are you Mr. Well, what the law says is what it says, Mr. Scalia. I think it's extremely worth noting. This is the only amendment, as you will see when we read the First Amendment, that actually has anything resembling a statement of why it exists. Nothing else says anything close to, here's why we put this in here.
Yeah, because we don't want the federal government or an outside government trying to come and overtake your
Right.
life, liberty, and pursuit to happiness.
And when you want to say, this is a big one, because everyone says, well, we had guns and we had to fight the British. You know who was fighting the British? It wasn't Johnny on the spot with his farm. It was the Concord Militia, a group of the city. It was the city of Concord's militia fighting the British. It wasn't, I'm a dude with a gun. Shit. No, it's, I'm a part of a group organized for the defense of
Also,
of the common. Of
this
the,
is
the
why
place.
I wish the $20 rule applied to this, because I would be more than fine with these assholes having the weapons available to the people at the time that this was written. If you had a goddamn musket that took like 15 minutes to load up properly and wouldn't even hit its target like 20% of the time, I'm happy with you to have that. But nobody needs a fucking assault rifle
Well, and it.
to defend themselves.
No. So the reason given is by necessary to the security of a free state.
Yeah.
Right.
Is like if we're reshuffling
A
this.
well-regulated militia being
Right.
necessary.
Well, it says yeah. The right it's
There's too many commas.
Well
buddy.
regulated is like the imperative term there.
well, the commas give you the benefit of you can shift these around in a different order and it should still read correctly.
Right.
So
Right.
if you are doing that, being necessary to the security of a free state, a well-regulated militia, and the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I think that makes it read more like because of this.
Yes.
What this reads to me is that because the state militias still exist as an entity, they like within our Constitution. This reads to me because we need our militias to be well regulated. we cannot allow the federal government to say that certain people can't have guns because it's the job of the state to
Right.
arm their militia. It's the job of the state to say, if Jack through Jonathan want to have a gun, we need them to have a gun to fight for us.
I think we're all of the mindset that this is saying that the state militia should be able to have its own weaponry
and its own rules about
and its
weaponry.
own,
But it should
and
be,
not necessarily speaking to the individual.
right.
Because
Because the well-regulated militia thing is the thing that trips me up. Because even the militias that are like exist in official capacities are fucking bonkers. There is a Mother Jones article that I really recommend everyone to read called "I Went Undercover with a Border Militia. Here's what I saw." Do you know how this person got access to the militia and joined? Facebook. They made a fake profile. The author did. Just saying, I love my guns, love my country, and added other people to who would just like add anybody who added them, created like this persona, and was then able to join militia Facebook pages, and from there got an invitation to be a militia member. That was the screening process, and the next thing this person knew, they were on border control patrol with a militia.
Here's my stance. It should be a process at least as hard to get a driver's license as it is to own a weapon.
I would say
that you can
to join the police force, it should be as difficult as that. You should at least have to like take an oath or something. God damn.
And the thing is, and the only reason why people have this reticence of being like, well, you can't have a registry, it's because they don't want the federal government. They're like, well, the federal government shouldn't be able to know who has a gun. Dude, what are you gonna do? They know you have a gun. They don't know you have a gun. They still have guns. It doesn't matter.
Don't you have to register your gun in most states anyway?
I'm of the general opinion. I mean, this just goes down to like, we live in a surveillance state. Like, let's just like come to terms with that. Effectively, everything has a camera in it.
Right.
You are being monitored.
Well, the truth also is that a lot of these people don't care about other people being surveilled.
Yeah, they're fine.
There's no equal outcry to, oh, let's enhance the power of the government with the Patriot Act. Where was the NRA being like, we will absolutely not stand for the Patriot Act? No, it's because it's people who are different than me that are getting their rights curtailed, but I don't want the government to know that I have a gun in my house. That's it.
But at the same time, I think we're losing the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
So what is
it's so interesting because we definitely like going into this, we're like, we need to unbox this.
I was going to say it's Slytherin or Gryffindor.
I'm going to say Gryffindor.
I think it's Gryffindor. Yeah.
I think it's something like on its surface, on paper, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But it has been mutated. But it's been mutated, and like some parts of it are just super vague. Because then you get into that whole like, let's agree on what the terms are. Like, what does a militia mean? That means something different from state to state.
Well, and also it's certainly crazy that we spent, you look to Amendment 5, Amendment 6.
Yeah.
Like we're getting real deep and dealing like multiple blows within like the court system, which obviously makes me believe
if I'm going off.
No. It also makes me believe because like if you look to the actual Constitution itself, I don't recall the court system even having that much in it in the articles. Maybe I'm completely off base.
What do you mean?
Like the Constitution itself, because Article 1 is dealing specifically with Articles 1 and 2 is legislative and executive branch.
Yes.
And Article 3 is the courts.
Yes. Article 3 is very little. Yes.
And Article 3 is pretty empty, which is why I feel then in the Bill of Rights, they're like, hey guys, we should probably like break this down a little bit more.
That's the scariest thing was learning that the Congress has the power to take away virtually all of the Supreme Court's ability to hear cases on appeal.
Right.
By law and by the Constitution.
And I think some of the Bill of Rights just stems from it's a very interesting thing because the Constitution itself goes sections 1 and 2, legislative and executive, like we're going to be pretty dense because these are the things that we, the lawmakers, are sort of discussing and breaking down.
Yeah.
And then after the fact, they were like, oh shit, maybe we should deal with the courts a little bit more
Right.
because we have them as part of our checks and balances.
Yeah.
But like we need a few more terms in place.
The-
But then
And the judges weren't even a balance until Marbury versus Madison and
well, what I was getting to was that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I glanced over the Constitution when then we were like, we're going to do the Bill of Rights, and was like, all right, then I don't need to know this.
Fuck the Constitution.
They don't really touch that much, if at all, on the military.
no, not really. They do mention the militia,
Right.
And they do mention the military, but that's really they're just like provide for the national defense.
But this is the first real mention that is terming and providing, which I think is why people do hold it as close to the chest as, and I understand and recognize that you take pride in your country and you want to defend your country. I think a militia and an army are two very...
They are. The Constitution does separate them.
Right.
They mention the army and they specifically state what Congress can and cannot do in terms of laws about the militia.
Yeah.
Separate
Right.
completely from the army.
Which makes me believe, again, that we're...
And I just want to say, remember how I said that the Supreme Court said that the Bill of Rights does not apply to the states? Their whole thing was, it's the states' job. The states are the people who will most protect their citizens because the states, you elect all the people in your states. You didn't elect all the people you didn't even elect your senators.
Right.
You know, so the federal government was the super not branch of the people, and your state, California, was supposed to be the thing that looks out for all Californians' needs. So the federal government shouldn't be protecting or changing your right to own guns. That's California's to decide.
Right.
Because California's always going to protect you more. It's fair knowing we have far more say in our federal government than they ever did. So
I'm just reading over. I keep... It's so crazy because it's a single sentence of like not even...
yeah, it's
like,
the short.
I don't know.
It's the second shortest, only to Amendment 8.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit longer than 9, but it's, you know,
But it's way, way more controversial and like subject to debate.
9 sounds like the beautiful one that should be smashed in so many people's faces, but 2 is the one we're always stuck on.
And like
Right.
what it always comes back to me, my argument is to people who want to argue in favor of personal ownership of guns. I always want to pause like the rhetorical. Okay, let's say, for whatever reason, tomorrow you will not have to fear for your personal safety from the government, from a foreign government, or from individuals. Would you still want to be able to have a gun? And I believe firmly, if that person says yes, they just like the idea of shooting stuff.
Yeah.
well, and absolutely, I
For
think
sure.
there. I think it's Jim Jeffries.
Yeah.
Is the comedian who
the Australian
the Australian comedian who has this one political piece on that about gun ownership, and his main argument of what people's arguments should be is just, I like guns.
Yeah.
And that's a permissible reason, but when you are citing the Constitution,
Right.
it's like you're trying to justify liking guns, but you can like
I like cars. Cars are far more necessary for my freedom as a person to not have to rely on public transportation and to be able to go where I want, when I want, whenever I want.
Yeah.
A car, but I don't have the right. No one in the entire country has the right to own a car.
And you have to register it every year, and you fucking can get it taken away if you're using it incorrectly.
Your state can just be like, we no longer grant driver's licenses. No one is allowed to drive on our... And if they unilaterally remove your right to have a driver's license, you cannot drive. Everyone and
yeah, there's
no
nothing
one,
in the Constitution that protects
and there's
it.
jack you can say about it. Jack, because as long as they take away the right to have a driver's license, that's done. You're done and it's over. So to say that guns should be more protected than my ability to drive in a country where everything's spread out now by like hundreds of miles.
yeah.
And so I would want to go to the deeper psychological reason for why do I like guns. And to me personally, my interpretation that I see is there's something really powerful with the idea that you can kill somebody just by pushing a button, by pulling a trigger.
Which scares the hell out of me. We
that-
were both, I think, so Katie and I met back in 2010
Yeah.
when we were on a feature film together.
You know each other a long time.
We have. I've known you longer. I've known I've known Andrew Tippin since he was in middle school because my mother was his theater teacher, which is crazy. Both of us have known one another for 15
but Michael
plus years. So,
and I were on a film shoot where we had to
We gotta move it up because you're.
yeah.
She's got a heart out, but we're gonna get there. So we met one another on a film shoot. Katie needed to shoot a gun in the movie.
Yeah.
And I have video of you shooting that shotgun.
Go ahead and link it. Like
I'll try and find
I was
it.
still a woman at the time, just so you know.
But she gets full on blown over by the gun. But anyway, looking at this.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Oh, no, it's powerful. So I would say that allure is very much on the cusp of a Slytherin or a Gryffindor, but because it has very good intentions.
I think it's a
Gryffindor.
Gryffindor.
And I just want to say, more to your point, the fact that I know people who have said, I wasn't into guns, and then I went to like one of those Las Vegas shooting ranges and picked up one of those automatic rifles and shot at the targets, and then was like, I know why people want guns. Yeah, it's not because you defended your life with a gun that you were like, oh, I know why people want guns.
I'm terrified whenever I hold guns.
No,
but
same.
I just don't like. It's the same with blades. Though.
I've used rifles. I feel safe with because they're long. Pistols, like I've never like fired a real pistol.
It feels too much like an extension of your immediate body.
It's so short, and I feel like it's so easy to be, and that's why people hurt themselves all the time with pistols.
Right,
and that's
idiots.
just why I say it should be licensed like a driver's. You should be known to be a careful person if you're gonna have a frickin' pistol.
I am. And I know this will probably give me a lot of hate. I feel like there should be an amendment on this amendment, just straight up saying like exactly who it should be. And this is probably something that will not be resolved within my lifetime or even the lifetime of like children's children.
And now
moving on to the
1.
First Amendment before our esteemed co-host has to leave.
This is my favorite one. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Do we all know where we feel this is to be sorted? Do we all have an opinion on this? Don't state it. Don't state it.
Okay, I'm gonna.
All right, we all think we have one. I'm just gonna do a 3, 2, 1, and we all announce what we think it is. 3, 2, 1.
Hufflepuff. Whoa.
Okay,
the lawyer has a different opinion.
Yeah, the lawyer's got
I'm
a different
excited to get into this.
I totally
lawyer.
get the Hufflepuff.
Right. I mean, I think just because we've been going off of fairness, but I'd like to hear your Gryffindor argument.
So my argument for why this is Gryffindor is there are Hufflepuff aspects to it, like protecting everyone's right to believe their own thing. But at the core, this is like your ability to say how you feel. Everyone has the right to put forth their idea, and no one should be able to criminalize like what you think and like push your idea and make your idea and try to affect the world with your idea. And that very like individualistic, like my idea approach, but like everyone else also gets their idea seems very like Gryffindor because it's very like, very like my opinion matters, but also I don't want to step on other people's opinions, but my opinion really does matter.
You're
Whereas
seeing
Hufflepuffs are more like humble.
So you're seeing it a little more as a like fight the power while we all fight the power sort of argument.
Yeah, it's definitely fight the power. The whole point was fight the power. Like
now, the reason why I think it's a Hufflepuff, and it is another reason why a lot of people, in my opinion, don't understand this amendment fully. Milo Yiannopoulos is probably the most recent example of people saying, by the virtue of Berkeley and its students protesting very violently and suppressing his ability to give that speech, they were saying this was an infringement upon his First Amendment rights. Now, here's why I would say it's not. He was not put in jail.
Right.
He was not criminalized.
Right.
People are saying that his First Amendment rights are being trampled upon, but they don't realize that criticism of somebody else's words, of their exercise of free right, is completely permissible by our Constitution. You
Absolutely.
you're not exempt from criticism from private entities or from being prohibited from being given a platform, from being
Right.
you are not free from protest.
Nobody has to give you a book deal. That's
Well, and it's
and
basically just saying
it's the author's First Amendment. It's the publisher's First Amendment right.
Yeah.
To a person who's like, I won't publish your book because I
If
disagree
the
with
government had then said, no, you are
is
legally,
illegal.
yeah,
Yeah, you
that
can't
would be their
self-publish.
First Amendment rights being
Because
violated.
guess what those like communists did back in the 50s? They printed their own pamphlets and handed them out.
Yeah.
And when those people were arrested, that was a violation of the First Amendment because you can't say that someone can't self-publish and distribute their
Right.
literature.
Right.
But Mr. Milo's not doing that. He's saying, I deserve a platform at Berkeley or I deserve a book deal. No.
And you know what he was,
and also
especially,
I
and what he
mean,
was planning to do was ridiculous. It was criminal in its own way, and he was not being.
well, and just for like not to speak too much to this one specific person,
Yeah.
but to those who are like lamenting you don't have a platform. No, you do. It's literally the internet. Like
we have more
we have-
access to free expression of using the First Amendment than we ever have in our
Yeah,
entire
like-
at any time in human history.
this we have so many technological bases. We have so many means of getting opinions out there.
Yeah.
I mean, we're recording a podcast in my bedroom that I'm going to upload.
Hell yeah.
Like it's
I'm
crazy
rolling
and
all over
insane.
Michael's bed.
Yeah, it's true. He's
Here-
making a
but
real
here's-
mess.
Here's why I say Gryffindor, in spite of your great arguments for Hufflepuff, is that I feel like the whole aspect of a man saying incredibly incendiary things, but also the people being able to be like, fuck you, is exactly Gryffindor. It's all like bold as brass. Like both of us have equal right to like
Right.
Right.
It's
give you the finger in your face.
it's going to be destructive, but it's also hopefully going to allow for people to reach a synthesis
Yeah.
on
and more
arguments.
the Hufflepuff is more like how we want to sort of guide
Right.
the First Amendment to be in practice.
Right.
Why not allowing hate speech should, but like how the little modifications made.
Yeah, I think
But I feel like on the like raw energy of the First Amendment to Gryffindor, and we're trying to funnel it through Hufflepuff.
I think-
Honestly,
yeah, it's-
I think I've been convinced because also it is like a very misunderstood amendment.
Absolutely.
And some people like want to use it in their own way, the same way that people wanted to manipulate Mr. Harry Potter.
Oh, absolutely.
So this is like the Harry Potter
Yeah.
of the amendments in that like some like right now, like this is probably going to be the most important amendment for the next 4 to 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
Is how the our government, how the White House, this administration treats the free press, how they treat the religious rights of people, and
Mhm.
how they treat the private rights of expression.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Is very much like everything's up in the air. They are like closing off media outlets from being briefed on press issues. Things are getting crazy in First Amendment town.
Yeah. Katie Reed with the on fire, on point analysis. It's, I totally agree.
and we've done it. We've sorted the Bill of Rights.
In our 2 hour.
No, we're just shy of 2 hours. This is definitely our
Holy
longest.
mother.
I
I
mean,
really want to have you come back to do the Constitution now. It'd be
Well,
so fun.
I'm saying the next time we have you back, Andrew, we're gonna do something goofy. I know that you.
I had fun though.
Yeah, I want to thank you for joining us on the Sorting Hat podcast. Where else can we find you?
You can find me on at Alf Tippin on Twitter. That's Tippin with 2 I's, no E. Not TIIP, whatever, you know.
Yeah, TIPPIN.
Yeah. And that's where I just tell all my dumbass jokes and a lot of
He's really funny on Twitter,
retweets.
dudes.
Oh,
Check it out.
Yeah,
Katie
and
Reed.
You can also find Katie Reed at that Katie Reed on
Yep.
Twitter.
On all social media platforms. If you want to see my new good haircut, which is depending on when it comes out, it might have grown out. We'll see.
And you can follow me
The haircut
at
is great.
Belated Media. We'd like to thank you once again for joining us for this very politically charged and lawful.
I love all of you and want to have
Episode.
reasonable discussions with each
Yeah,
and
I
every
learned
one
so
of you.
much today, dudes. That's the magic of Harry Potter.
Harry Potter so magic.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.